Women participation in the Indian Armed Forces is a relatively recent phenomena. There are very few women who consider army as their first career choice. In the process, what if she finds a marriage partner within the army but from a different religious faith? How does she integrate the diversity in faith and values within her immediate and extended families? How does she negotiate between career and life choices? How does she balance competing priorities of family, health, aging, purpose, and passion amidst her life's transitions to discover her wholeness? To explore these questions and more, here is a conversation with Sonal Sharda, a leadership and organization development professional leading strategic initiatives in people, capability, change, and culture domains. She has over 2 decades of experience in the corporate world as well as the Indian Army, where she served as a major across multiple field locations for nearly 10 years. Welcome, Sonal, to this episode of Wings Podcast.
Thank you, Milind. Such a pleasure to be here.
Honor and joy is equally ours, Sonal. Sonal, there are very few women that I have met in my life who began their career in the armed forces and spent like you 10 years and then moved to the corporate world. So, in a way, I am intrigued, though we've been knowing each other for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
What was the world of Sonal, who was a major in the Indian Army? Maybe we could begin our conversation there.
Yes, it was unusual during those times for a girl to choose the army as a career. But I was always driven by wanting to do something for the nation. Very purpose driven. Even as a child, I was very clear when I was studying that I didn't want to go down the usual paths. When we were growing, the career paths most frequently chosen were engineering, medicine, law, and I'm from Bombay, so you know that. So state services and UPSC wasn't that big a craze as much as was engineering, and then computer engineering was picking up computer science. And I was very clear that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something that served my nation in some way. This was always clear to me. And I was in NCC in my college for 3 years. That kind of gave me a window into the world of uniform. It gave me a window into meeting people who served the army, and I think that served as my motivation to find something. What happened is that the army opened up for women a couple of years before I got to know about it. And I completed my graduation. I was doing my PG in cytogenetics. I just applied, didn't really know. I had no one from my family who was in the army or defense forces. I applied. I cleared exams after exams, and I cleared the SSB. And before I knew it, I was in the army. I didn't really know what a rare or a unique thing it was. It happened. I was a kid. I was 20. But I have to tell you that going to the army really shaped me in ways that I'm still discovering. What it does is it uniquely looks for your traits that they amplify. So a lot of the strengths-based thing that we refer to these days in development has I find it reflected there, that they look for the strengths that would get amplified there, and then they go about it in such a structured fashion. The whole individual growth, development, systems, organizations, all of it. So that was how it began. And I would say that every day was an adventure because there weren't that many women. And I think I came out of that experience feeling that I can do anything in the world.
And where did this role in the Indian Army take you? Because what I just read in your introduction, that it has taken you to multiple
Multiple places.
locations.
So see, I was a Mumbai girl, born
Yes.
and brought up in Mumbai girl. I trained in Chennai at the Officers Training Academy, and from there I went to multiple places. So I went to a unit in Ahmedabad, but when I was there, we had these exercises that happen, and then we had Opajay and then Oparakram. So I'll just tell you the places that I have been, and
Sure.
instead of the so Ahmedabad, Rajasthan, where at the border. Then I was in the northeast part of India. I was in Assam. I was in Arunachal. I was in JNK. So I was in close to a place in Srinagar, in Leh, Ladakh. I was in Punjab. What have I missed? That's about it. For 10 years, this was enough.
But these are all front combat locations. Would it be, am I right in saying that?
Uh, some of them were, and some of them weren't. Like Ahmedabad is not on the border. It's not a field location. However, so in the army, they say that when in peace, you train for war. So when you're at peace locations, the distinction is called field and peace. You train, and for that you move into exercises into locations which are close to the border. But yes, some of them were peace, where we trained on exactly what our roles were when we moved to field locations. So some of them were.
But then I'm sure you would have had some interesting experiences as a as a as a woman
Yeah.
amongst, I guess, many soldiers who are obviously young men.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would have led them also many
I
times.
did, I did. My role there was a leader. So when I started my career in the army, you start as a lieutenant and you lead a platoon. A platoon is between 30 to 37 people depending on the composition. So you get groomed. The whole point of the training academy is to be a good soldier, be a good leader, and it's implicit that you need to be a good person. To play these roles, you need to be a good person, and then you be a good professional. So I'll take your question, a little further. So yes, I did lead people, and if you're asking if gender made a very big, if gender played a big role,
At least in the times that you were in the
then yes,
army, which I
yes,
guess was in the late 90s.
yes, from 98 to 2008.
Yeah.
Um, so I think this is hindsight. Okay, I think what happens is that that leadership really is a practice of choice, and it's a practice of reflection. So choice is the act of doing, and reflecting is really thinking about what you're doing. When I joined in as a 21-year-old, leading a platoon of men, I, for me, my gender wasn't my primary identity. But for, of course, the people who saw me, I was the only girl in sometimes hundreds and thousands of men.
That's right.
What happens is that there is a test of acceptance of sorts. When you go to lead any group, you're a leader if people are following you. So the army trains you one extremely well for that. You have structures, you have routine, you have processes, policies, procedures, and you always know where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to lead your team. Um, a lot of it is role modeling, leading from the front. So you come into a system which is well structured, and the army, I have to give it to them, did a great job in amalgamating and integrating it, because there was always preparation and then execution. So I was prepared based on my strengths to be a good person, a good soldier, a good leader, by leading from the front, by choosing to do the right things and then choosing to do the right way. So what happens is that when you lead a team, they give you the grace to see who you are and whether you will lead them. if you run with them, train with them, fire with them, I think the acceptance of a leader happens. And this would happen even with a man. So even young cadets, men who would pass out from the academy, would need to go through this entire rigor,
Of course.
and they would need to earn their respect as a leader. I think what helped me is that I was so young that for me, I didn't really see the obstacles that much. All I knew was that's my goal. I need to do this. This is how I need to be as a platoon commander. This is who I need to be as a lieutenant. And I went ahead and did that. I think in many, many times, ignorance is bliss.
But then you have roots in Punjab.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
you have roots in Jalandhar.
Yes, yes.
So, was there in any way the Punjabi in you, the Punjabi kudi in you,
Yeah.
aiding you or helping you in doing a role which is many way perceived more as a masculine role?
It's a good question.
Or let me rephrase this. Looking at the narrative that we today talk about in the world of leadership and people,
Yeah.
is what is the nature of leadership? The traditional thinking, it's all
Masculine, yeah.
which is there is goal orientation, there is strategy, there is troubleshooting,
Yeah.
there is an orientation towards action and achievement, which in many ways are kind of connected to the traits of masculinity. Again, this is more a dictionary meaning of things and how we humans have given it a kind of a meaning to that. But then, looking at you as a person, looking at your experience in the Indian Army, I'm tempted to ask you, how do you see leadership as a phenomena
I think
especially in
today's
the world that we live today?
Today, yeah.
And when I'm saying leadership, it is not necessarily roles in organizations. It leadership in family context, leadership in social contexts.
So I hear you. One, it's a good question. It's a great question. I think to answer your earlier question about what helped me, my roots in Punjab. I was born and brought up in Mumbai. I have to tell you, I'm a complete Maharashtrian Muli. Okay, I in fact can't read Punjabi, but in Marathi, I will be able to write pians about its literature and famous authors. So I'm not sure, how much of that Punjabiyat helped me. I think what helped me is that I was born into a family where my parents really got me to dream boundaryless. And like I said, till I went to the army, gender wasn't my primary identity. My primary identity was this child who thought she can do anything in the world. My parents brought me up with a lot of. They were very liberal in their thought. They were extremely liberal in the way they let me experiment and fall and have an opinion. And in society generally, women are conditioned and brought up in a way to be more submissive and pleasant and docile, and I didn't know any of that till I was in my mid-20s. Really, I grew up in a family which let me dream and didn't tell me what I couldn't do, but they kept nudging me like, listen, do you want to try this? Would you like to try this? So I think being born to my parents was my luckiest draw. That went a long way. And in my early teens, we faced some crises at home, medical emergencies. We faced great difficulties, and for that, I needed to step up into the role of a young adult very early. It gave me a lot of. We were stressed, but I think it gave me a lot of can-do attitude. It gave me a very deep-rooted conviction that you can survive anywhere, but what's the joy in moving forward is to thrive. So I think I took these when I went to the army more than any regional identity that helped me. It was this deep rooted conviction that if there is a task, it can be done if you set your mind to it, You look at how it needs to be done, take help if needed, don't be know it all, partner with people, but you can do it. Resilience, grit. I think these were the things that I took from this specific cocktail of being born to my parents, to the difficulties and the obstacles that I kind of needed to overcome when I was in my teens. And that took me to, and frankly, also a great big deal of ignorance about about really what awaits me when I join the army. I have to be honest.
So looks like your mantra seems to be, चलो देखते हैं क्या
क्या
होता
होता
है.
है?
And in this
Yes.
देखते हैं क्या होता है, the army not only made you a Fauji girl or a Fauji woman, the army also gave you a Fauji husband
Yeah. It
with
did.
whom you now have two wonderful kids, uh, aged, I think,
Now 16 and 10.
16 and 10.
Wow.
And it was also an interfaith marriage in some
Yes.
ways.
Many ways.
A Hindu Punjabi girl in the armed forces, of
Yeah.
course, marrying a.
Telugu Christian boy.
So it would be interesting to also hear from you, if possible, with some experiences, if you're willing to share,
Yeah.
as to how having a relationship which is across faiths
Yes.
and then giving birth to amazing kids and raising them with certain values.
Values.
So how has Sonal the mother and Sonal the wife, much beyond Sonal the Fauji, navigated that part of her life, or is navigating that part of her life?
Wow. Sometimes you're so much in the doing that you don't take a pause to figure out the pattern in your doing. I think I never really thought about marrying beyond faith. Like, I didn't really think about marriage, frankly. I think Nirmal, my husband, is one of the best human beings I've met in my life. And this is post-marriage, okay? Like 20 years, we've been married 20 years. And when I met him, I really found someone who saw me for who I was. And faith was very secondary to both of us. And in terms of this relationship, what really stood out for us, even now, if you probably put me under hypnosis and try to go into the far reaches of my mind, I would talk about the person and the values that they live by more than faith. So I think for both of us, it was a no-brainer. But as you can imagine, in India and
Yeah, it's not the marriage is not between the man and the woman. It is the families that come together.
families, cultures, and
And faith, all said and done, even in the 21st century, 2023
it's the
India,
cause of so much conflict
is
everywhere.
is the perpetual elephant in the room.
Yeah. It's the cause of so much of strife and conflict and reason for people to pick up offense at
So how has this thread, been navigated by you as your role in the mother in bringing up your two kids?
It's an interesting question. So one, I'll just take a step back, is that neither of us converted to each other's religion.
Oh, so he remained a Catholic.
He remained a Catholic and I continued to follow my Hindu faith.
Okay.
Okay. I think because for both of us, religion kind of transcends the framework that is currently being followed. That if you're a Christian, you need to follow 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, and if you live as a Hindu, these are the certain steps you need to follow. And I think for us, it was important that we continue to believe in whatever we believed in, and we lived our values to their highest form. So, for instance, I don't really need to go to a temple to keep my faith, and same is the case for Nirmal. but we needed a place for when our parents visited us.
Correct.
Okay, the first time when we got married and we were both in field, so we didn't have a house together for the first, I think, 3 years of our marriage. Okay, we lived in different parts of the country, different borders, and we would meet and go to one of our parents' place when we would come for holidays. So the first time we had a house together was almost 3 years after marriage. And we set up the house, but we didn't set up a place for a mandir or an altar. Both of us are very laissez-faire in that way. We're very casual about these things. We had to think about it when our parents were visiting us, because both of our parents follow these rituals of praying in the morning. You know, my mom goes to mandir, Nirmal's parents go to the church, and we had to think about that and then cater for something. And then we both started thinking, okay, what do we do? And I said, you know what? Let's create a symbolic space for them to come in. And all that we did in the house was we had a Ganesh ji, we had a Murti of Ganesh, and we had one cross. And that's it. And this is what we've followed for the last 20 years, that there is a space that you can come to and pray if you'd like to in our home, and be thankful and happy that we created this space for you, because that is our way of showing respect to you. But one, I don't need this space to carry the faith that I have, and neither does he. And by the way, my children follow both the faiths.
What have you named them?
So the kids have Gaelic names, Ryan and Brendan.
No, what is their full name?
Ryan Sharda Muthiala and Brendan Sharda Muthiala, which has my surname as well as my husband's surname, which was, long before it became fashionable in the world outside. And it created quite a bit of unrest in some parts of the family.
Did the kids have difficulties at school explaining their surname?
Not at all.
Because the typical is one's name, maybe the father's name, and the surname.
Yeah, when the kids have a mother like me, they grow into the world carrying a hidden sword. That if something happens, they know that is the sword. So one is that they grew up believing that this is the norm. They don't really think of it as different. And in most cases we've hopped a lot by virtue of my husband still being in the army. We've hopped a lot. When I go for admissions, I make myself abundantly clear about what the name is, how I would like it reflected, and I'd make no bones about it. And if the school the school shouldn't have an issue. Frankly, I've not faced any problems so far. I do get sometimes strange social queries about, mostly, from people who are horrified that this could happen to their son or to their family.
Correct.
And they have this sense of, at times, shock and horror that, oh my God, here is a woman who has an opinion, here is a woman who thinks, here is a woman who actually has a say in how her family is formed and run. And to them, I have many, many ways of dealing with it. But over the last 10, 15 years, I think I deal with it with a fair bit of kindness.
But let me share my personal take on this, and I'll probably bring in my own personal experience. And somehow I believe that the so-called polarized world that we are living in, for good or bad, for various reasons, social, economic, political, fragmentation is the way reality seems to be. For me, the healing will come, this is my personal belief, when you actually encourage interfaith or intercultural relationships. I'm not saying forcingly. I mean, if it happens, one should welcome it.
To build on what you just said. So, for instance, if you ask my children, so when we would hop states and we would hop cities, I remember my elder one once had an assignment that you had to dress up as the as the native you belong to. Okay? And my son came to me and said, okay, Mama, am I, like, what is my, who am I? Am I a Marathi? Am I a Punjabi? Am I Telugu? Am I, so I said, why do you ask that? He said, no, I have to dress up as such. So I told him, my son, you're Indian. Okay, because you have a mom whose roots are somewhere but born and brought up somewhere else, and my husband is a second generation brat. He's an army child, so he's also hopped all over. So, and then we both in the army. For us, our blood is OG, olive green. That is my identity. That's our religion. That's our regionalism. That's my nationalism. That's our everything. So I wrote for him a short. So you had to go and talk about the region or the state and dress up as such. So I got him to dress up in an Indian way, an ethnic way, and I gave him a short script that my father has roots from this place, and he's a, then he was a major in the army. My mother is so and so, she belongs to this place, and I'm an Indian, and I belong everywhere, and all of India belongs to me. So I think, a narrative can be built. We can, if it depends on what you go looking for, like in taxonomy. If you start with the differences, you can go down to a certain level up to differences, or you look at commonalities, dicotyledons, monocotyledons. You either look at ways that unify you, or you look at ways that divide you.
So, doesn't it mean, at least that's how I see it, is many a times the words that we use and the language that we use to create those words
Shapes our reality.
creates the very prison
Bilkul.
that we find ourselves in.
Absolutely.
And just as you were talking about your kids are saying that, my mother is a Hindu, my father is a Christian,
Yeah.
and I carry both the faiths,
Faith,
but I'm
yeah.
an Indian.
Yeah.
There is this interesting concept I'm suddenly reminded about called the idea of twin citizenship. Something which was a word coined by one Professor Charles Handy.
Yeah.
Sometime in the decade of 70s and 80s, he was a British professor. And he essentially he was looking at Europe, because he was in Britain, and he was seeing Europe as an amalgamation of multiple nations and multiple cultures. Now these are pre-Eurozone days, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Euro came into existence only around 2000 or so. But what he talked about of having one's local identity, cherishing it, valuing it, respecting it, and yet at the same time looking at an identity which is much beyond. And in the Indian context, I always looked at this perpetual, perennial fight between the farmers across the state of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu on the Kaveri River water
Waters.
dispute.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when you look at the farmer across the two state boundaries, where a Tamil farmer is fighting a Kannadiga farmer over water, which is a universal resource which knows no state boundaries or any boundaries, it just flows. If only they were able to say that, yes, you are a Kannadiga and I am a Tamil, but at the same time we are Indians. In which case, if we are able to elevate ourselves to a higher identity,
Yeah.
maybe we will find a common ground to talk and work and live together. I'm sure this is something which, I want to have your take on that, of being able to be local, regional, but at the
Global
same time
and-
national and global too.
I'll tell you, this is a very divisive thought, that you can only be if you're this, you can't be that.
The either or thinking.
The either or thinking that you can, and I think I don't know, where does it stem from? It doesn't stem from the from the Oriental school of thinking, because we are masters in duality. We are masters in balancing
The yin and the yang.
the yin and the yang, the life and death. And so, as you were talking, I was wondering about, like, listen, if we want to like I said, it's like taxonomy. If you want to look at the differences, we can find differences within a family. Okay, between two brothers, two sisters, two khandans, two castes, two religions, two states, two regions. Like it can go on, two nations, right? It depends on where does the core of your identity belong. So I'm Sonal. I grew up in Mumbai. I'm a Fauji. I work in the corporate world. I'm a mother. I'm a partner to my husband. I'm my mother's daughter. I am so many things. Who says I get to choose one part? And in a lot of the inclusion world that we try to create and belong and inculcate, this notion of identity that you just brought in, I think needs to be spoken about, needs to be explored, needs to be encouraged. Are you a human first? Are you an Indian first? Are you a Maharashtrian first? Are you, Kokanastha Brahman first? Like where do you, are you an Agnihotri first? Are you a Sharda first? Like where does your identity rest? And even if it rests in a certain small subsect, how open are your doors of your mind and your heart to look at many, 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 many other subsects and say, you know what? We all belong in this temple, in this region, in this life, in this humanity. And maybe I'll tie this to a question that I didn't answer that you asked in the beginning. That how do I perceive leadership in these VUCA on steroids world of today? Okay. I was speaking to I was speaking to an elderly person that I'm very, very fond of. I won't take her name here today. But, she said that sometimes I think that the state of Earth today, with the climate change and the way we are consuming resources and the way we are functioning, the way we've created systems in this world, is because leadership was primarily masculine. I don't mean just the men, because men are subject to
Sure.
and victims of it as much as women are. The system that we created, okay, that was a result of the leadership that created it, has been a hard way of doing things. I won't say, and I think the world of today has, of course, walked, quite a path from there. But the world of today is towards collaboration, towards consultative, nature of leadership. It is towards bringing things together, being a facilitator, enabling more than dictating, directing. Being the power center, knowledge center, being the know-it-all. My way, I know better. Me, the ophthalmologist of the world,
I am
eye
okay.
specialist.
I am okay. You are not okay.
Yeah. So from there, the shift to the more yin way of doing things, the more softer way of doing things, the more mother way of doing things,
So,
is where we are moving. We should be moving a lot faster. And by this, I don't mean only women have this form of leadership. No, I'm taking it away from gender.
yep.
I'm taking it to a space which is that from a more directive and survival oriented way of existing to a more nurturing, thriving way of existing. You need leaders that don't say, kill so that I can survive, but you move to a way that says, come, let's grow together. Let's see what needs to be done to thrive.
This sounds to me, and in some ways, Sonal, we are having this conversation in person. And as I was listening to you, I was actually able to see the halo around you. As if you are somehow graduating into the what shall I say, the spiritual world of the wise woman that you have become. But I guess this happens to all of us. I think it's in your 20s when the adrenaline is pumping, and we all have gone through it. I've gone through it. And at some stage, as they say, we move from a stage of, unconscious incompetence to conscious competence.
Yeah.
A stage where I say, I don't know that I don't know, to a stage where at least I say, I know that I know. And I think this is a beautiful sweet spot where the possible next step from a conscious competence is to a world of unconscious competence, that I
Wow.
don't know that I know.
Yeah.
So, at this very interesting stage of your life, having put in more than 2 decades of work in the world of people, culture, change, and so many other areas in the world of human resources, uh, I'm sure there are multiple priorities in front of you at this stage.
Right.
I'm sure, you know, your elder son is 16, you said, right?
Yes.
So I'm sure he would be in his own world and a young man in his own way. So,
Yes.
how
So
do you see this transitioning phase of your own life right now as to something that you have built and created in this world is now finding its own roots, not only in terms of the work that you have done, but even your children. Uh, and then moving ahead in pursuing certain purpose and passion which probably weren't there earlier.
true. So to tell you what occupies my mind and heart as of today are a couple of things. One, of course, is parenting. I think this has been the single most um, transformational change in my life. Becoming a parent, becoming a mother, I think changed me more than anything else. Anything else. And this is not to take away from those who choose to not become parents. Just want to, okay. But for me, becoming a parent really changed my outlook towards myself, towards the world, towards towards everything that I touched and interacted with. Um, it really is like carrying your heart outside your body. So parenting for me has been a very rewarding, very fulfilling, very scary, stressful journey. For me, it sometimes keeps me up at night when I see the craziness in the world, when I see what the internet and social media has brought to our, not just to our door, to our fingertips. The newspapers and TV brought it to our to our drawing rooms, and now it's brought it to our fingertips. So I worry about that. I worry about creating the right ecosystem for them, to give them both roots and wings. Though I know it sounds cliched, I can hear my mom in my ears. Um, but to give them the wherewithal to help them figure out their own self in this world, and to give them the opportunity, the ecosystem where they choose to be good human beings. So that occupies a very big part of uh, my living. The other thing that stays with me very deep is that I see my mom and my husband's parents aging. I see them aging, and I probably I've known my mom, of course, since I was born, and Nimal's parents for the last 20 years. But I see them aging, and I see what occupies them. What do they struggle with? What do they enjoy? What has brought them in fulfillment? And so, right from their sense of their physical state, their health, their mental well being, their emotional well being, what are the things that they struggle with? And I learn so much from it, because I see them and I say, okay, these are the things I need to prepare for.
So, isn't this a very interesting phase of life? And
Yeah.
I kind of went through that crossroads a few years back myself, where what I have given birth to,
I
my
don't.
son,
Yeah.
is now becoming more and more independent,
Yeah.
and what has given birth to me
Is
is
becoming more
becoming
dependent.
more and more dependent.
Very true.
And you know, juggling between these two psychological processes.
Yeah. And remember, even individually, you're moving, right? You're not 20, you're not 30, you're in 40. You yourself are also aging,
Yes.
right? So I see my mortality more and more in my consciousness through my parents, through both sets of parents. And as you know, I lost my dad really early. All right. So uh, that also stays in me. Everyone, losing a parent, I think also is a milestone that I wish it only comes later and later in life and not very early. So these are the things, and the last part, which I'm doing a lot about, is finding a space where you can give back to ecosystems, to ecology, to the earth, and society. This is something that I want, and this is also preparing for my aging, right?
So,
I've,
any specific ideas or plans you have?
yes. I fulfilled a long standing dream. I bought a small piece of land on the outskirts of Pune, about 80
Wow.
kilometers away, and uh, I intend to make this into my offering to earth. I see that as my temple, as my faith. I want to create a holistic ecosystem, a permaculture setup, and I want to create a space for learning. I want to create a space for children or young adults, and enable conversations, enable spaces where they can either come and upskill themselves or find a person or a place, a space to come and talk, pour, vent, learn. So I want to create a learning space which is open to all, but who I'm going to be reaching out more are children and young adults, privileged, not so privileged, open to everybody. And I want to open it to people who've lived a large part of their life already, and but who want to give back to society. They may not be working in full-time jobs anymore. They may have retired from a full-time profession, but they've not retired from life. They have so much wisdom, time, and experience to share. So I want to create a learning center where I invite the elderly, and I invite young adults and kids to come and learn. They can learn about growing plants, holistic ecosystems, ecology, how can they contribute. They can also learn about things um, like maybe maths, coding, communication, leadership skills. I,
So,
I'm
is this a full time role for you?
eventually, eventually.
So, do you see yourself physically moving to this place?
Eventually, once my younger one, completes his 12th grade, and they both step into something. I'm hoping, again, these are dreams, but what if life if you don't dream? So I intend to move there. I don't know what life will carry, because I know that parents will also probably need more medical support in the years to come. So I will have a foot in the city, but I will have a large part of me in the farm. But it's a long term thing, maybe 10 years, because it'll take time to create. I'm working full time. I'm a full time parent. My husband's on the in the field. So, but yes, this is the dream, and this is what's occupying me.
You know, Sonal, you have a very fascinating DP on your WhatsApp.
Yeah.
A group of women wearing saris
And Gajra
and
and
gajra, sitting on tall bar stools enjoying maybe a glass of wine together. That's how the picture looks to me.
Yeah.
And laughing and having fun with them. And these are not young girls, these are like probably women in their late 30s, early 40s,
Yeah. Or 50s.
or
Yeah.
50s.
Yeah.
So, what does this image symbolize for you?
You know, it's interesting. I picked it up from an artist. I'm sorry, I don't recall her name. Um, from Insta. I follow a lot of artists on Insta, and I picked up the DP um, because I thought this was it was such a cool thing. Okay, and they're breaking so many notions and not breaking it by just being there. So usually you find a gang of men at the bar monopolizing the bar, but here these are very traditionally, conservatively dressed
Sari clad women.
sari clad, gajra, juda, choti, and at the bar and having a drink and having a very good time with the women friends. Um, it really just resonated with me because this talks about not being one or the other. That if you were if you adopt a certain way of being, it does not exclude you from multiple other choices. Okay. And also, if you just look at the gender aspect of it also, they're breaking so many stereotypes by being there. So I think that's kind of a reflection of who I am in my life. And
So, is this the Fauji in you? The Fauji. Let me say this correctly. Is this the Fauji DNA in you,
yeah.
with a gun or a sword or whatever in your hand, with a goal to break some stereotypes? Is that a calling that you see for yourself today?
Actually,
Not
what
may
a
not be
question.
consciously. May
Yeah,
not be
what a
consciously.
question. But it's a fabulous question. It's a fabulous question, and I want to answer it. Even when I joined the army, the idea was not to break a ceiling, right? And even right now, consciously or not consciously, my idea is not to break something. My idea is that I want to be the bestest version of this human being that I can be. And if that means that there are, walls in the way, or if there are obstacles in the way, I will go over them, through them, around them, whichever way. But my goal is not to overcome the obstacle. My goal is to be the best human version of myself that I could dream of. That someone who was compassionate and who grew and who maybe in the process helped others grow. But even helping others grow is a part of my growth. Like, that's not my aim. My aim is that as a human being, I have such a finite time on this earth. I want to make the most of it.
This is reminding me of a beautiful, beautiful song in an equally beautiful movie. The movie is Lion King,
Yeah.
the Disney favorite that all of us have watched so
So
many times. And this is an Elton John song called The Circle of Life.
Life.
And let me read out a few lines
Yes, please.
for you right now.
Yes.
It's the circle of life, and it moves us all through despair and hope, through faith and love,
Wow.
till we find our place on the path unwinding in the circle of life.
I never really paid attention to the lyrics as much as I did today. It's so beautiful. It moves us all through despair and hope, through faith and love, till we find our place on the path unwinding in the circle of life. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Is this where Sonal is today?
Yeah. Actually, I'm at a very nice place in the circle. When you gave me the analogy of, different psychological spaces that my children and parents are occupying, and this moment. And I thought it's such a lovely space to be in, where you feel empowered enough to say that yes, I need to enable this, and I need to look after this. It is a space of giving, and I'm so full of gratitude for that.
So looks like I'm in conversation right now with a mother,
Yeah.
a Fauji for life,
Yeah.
who believes that the color of her blood is OG, olive green, the dress
Yeah.
she wore in the armed forces. A corporate leader in a large multinational company, we haven't spoken about that, but uh, working across geographies,
Yeah.
at a beautiful stage, seeing her own children grow up, becoming independent,
Yeah.
looking after her own parents and her own in-laws as a caregiver.
Yeah.
At the same time, never forgetting to have her moments in the bar wearing a sari and her own juda with fellow
Yeah.
women like herself.
Yes. Yes.
That's
Wow.
the image I am
Carrying.
seeing at this point in time as I see it.
And I'm thank you for this conversation, Milind, because it brought me to this moment of content and happiness that I worked and built this path where I've reached today, this circle, this point in the circle that I'm occupying. And I'm grateful to life. I'm happy.
And the Circle of Life song lyrics says a lot, but yet doesn't say a few things, according to me. Is two very important questions. What next? Where next?
So there are some milestones that I know I will need to, like my children's education, and I'm waiting for my husband's, term in the army to complete. But the next step is like I said, it's that farm, that space that I want to create, a sacred space of trust and learning and growth and giving back, and in the process growing. That is that's my dream. That's my next step. My dream.
Wonderful, Sonal. This has been such a beautiful, what shall I say, meandering conversation. I don't know where we started, I don't know where we have ended,
Yeah.
but looks like it's the Elton John song of Circle of Life going around in circles.
You got me to a happy space.
And same here, and enjoyed this conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Milind.
let's continue this conversation offline,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
maybe over a glass of wine somewhere.
Somewhere at the bar, in the sari and a
At
juda.
Sari and a Juda. And I'll have Asha with me. And she is not a Sari Juda girl,
Girl,
okay?
yeah.
She's very much a casuals kind of a person. Though she enjoys her own Chardonnay,
All are welcome.
all are welcome. So, Sabhay Bhumi Gopal ki,
Oh, yes.
as
yes.
they say, right?
Yes.
So wonderful, Sonal. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your time today, my dear listeners. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri, signing off. Goodbye, take care, and stay safe. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as a piece of any professional advice. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of its guest. Creators of this podcast expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct or indirect, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast. For feedback and suggestions, please write to wingsindia75@gmail.com. Thank you.